Elias Thorne's hands were shaking as he checked his watch for the third time in 2 minutes. 10:47 a.m. 13 minutes until the interview that could change everything. He pressed his portfolio tighter against his chest, trying to shield the precious contents from the rain that had transformed Oakhaven Bay into something biblical. Water rushed down the streets in angry torrents, swallowing storm drains whole and turning intersections into dangerous rivers. He'd spent 3 years preparing for this moment, 3 years of late nights in his cramped Northside apartment, sketching until his fingers cramped, building a portfolio that could speak louder than his humble address ever would. Vanguard Tech Design wasn't just another company, it was the company, the kind of place where careers were launched and legends were made, the kind of place that didn't usually look twice at kids from neighborhoods like his. The wind howled, nearly ripping the umbrella from his grip. Elias adjusted his tie, feeling the weight of his father's old watch on his wrist. It had stopped working years ago, but he wore it anyway. His mother's voice echoed in his head from their call that morning. "Character is what you do when the world isn't looking, baby. Your father taught you that." He rounded the corner onto Harbor Street and his heart sank. The intersection ahead was completely flooded, at least 2 feet of murky water stretching across 4 lanes. Cars had stopped, their hazard lights blinking like distress signals, horns blared in discordant symphony. And there, right in the middle of it all, was a sleek silver electric vehicle, dead in the water. Elias could see the Vanguard Tower in the distance, its glass facade rising like a promise above the chaos. 10 minutes. He could still make it if he ran, if he just kept moving. Then he saw her. The woman behind the wheel of the stalled car wasn't moving. Even through the rain-streaked window, Elias could see her hands gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles had gone white. Her chest was heaving, she was having a panic attack, and every driver behind her was too angry to notice or too hurried to care. 8 minutes now. Elias looked at the tower, then back at the woman. His mother's words rang louder. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. He found a relatively dry spot under a bus stop shelter and carefully placed his portfolio inside a plastic trash bag he'd been carrying. He tucked it as far back as he could, whispered a prayer, and stepped into the flood. The water was shockingly cold, immediately soaking through his worn dress shoes and climbing up his legs. He waded toward the silver car, ignoring the angry shouts from other drivers. When he reached the window, he knocked gently. The woman's eyes snapped to his, wide with fear. "Hey," he said, raising his voice over the storm. "I'm going to help you, okay? I need you to unlock the door." For a moment, she just stared at him like he was a hallucination. Then, slowly, the lock clicked open. Elias opened the door and crouched down, getting his entire suit soaked in the process. "I can't breathe," she gasped. "I can't. The water. I thought it would pass, but it just kept rising, and now I'm stuck, and everyone's honking, and I have this thing I have to get to, and—" "Look at me," Elias said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "What's your name?" "Sloane," she managed between rapid breaths. "Sloane, I'm Elias. I'm going to get you out of this, but I need you to breathe with me first. Can you do that?" He took an exaggerated breath, holding her gaze. "In through your nose, out through your mouth." She tried to follow, her breathing gradually slowing. Behind them, the honking intensified, but Elias blocked it out. He'd learned about panic attacks when his cousin went through them. You couldn't rush someone through it. You had to be the calm in their storm. After 2 minutes that felt like 20, Sloane's breathing had steadied enough for her to nod. "Better," she whispered. "Good. Now, do you know what's wrong with the car?" "It just died. Everything went black." Elias glanced at his watch. The hands were still frozen at 3:17, but he knew his interview was starting in less than 5 minutes. He pushed the thought away and focused on the problem in front of him. These electric vehicles sometimes have issues when the battery connections get wet. "Pop the hood for me." Sloane fumbled with the controls, and the hood released with a soft click. Elias waded to the front of the car, lifted the hood, and immediately saw the problem. The main battery connector had worked loose, probably from hitting the flooded section too hard. He pressed it back into place, heard a satisfying click, and slammed the hood down. "Try it now." The car hummed to life.
The dashboard lights sparkled like stars, and Sloane let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. Elias guided her through moving the car to higher ground, waiting alongside until she was safely out of the flood zone. She rolled down her window as he approached, and he could see tears mixing with the rain on her face. "I don't even know what to say," she said. Thank you doesn't feel like enough." "It's enough," Elias assured her, trying not to think about the time. "Just pay it forward, yeah? Help the next person who looks like they're drowning." Sloane reached for her purse. "Please, let me give you something. I don't have cash, but I have—" She pulled out a stunning diamond ring, holding it toward him. "Take this as collateral. Come by my office tomorrow, and I'll pay you properly." Elias held up his hands, backing away. "I don't want payment. I want you to get to wherever you need to be safely." "But you're soaked, your clothes." "We'll dry," he smiled. "Go, before traffic gets worse." She looked at him like she was trying to memorize his face, then nodded slowly. "What you did, not many people would have done that." "Maybe," Elias said, "but someone should." As her car pulled away, Elias turned and ran. His shoes squelched with every step, his suit clung to him like a second skin, and his heart pounded so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. He grabbed his portfolio from the bus shelter and sprinted the remaining 3 blocks to Vanguard Tower. He burst through the glass doors at 11:23 a.m., dripping water all over the pristine marble floor. The receptionist looked up, her professional smile faltering at the sight of him. "I'm here for the 11 o'clock interview, Elias Thorne. I know I'm late. I'm so sorry, there was an emergency." The receptionist's expression shifted from surprise to something like pity. "Mr. Thorne, I'm afraid there's been an incident. We're actually closing the building. The CEO was in an accident this morning, and all appointments have been canceled indefinitely." The words hit him like a physical blow. Elias stood there, water pooling around his feet, his entire body starting to shiver now that the adrenaline was wearing off. "Canceled? I'm terribly sorry. We'll be in touch about rescheduling." Elias nodded numbly and turned to leave. Outside, the rain had finally started to ease, as if the universe had decided it had punished him enough for one day. He walked the 45 minutes back to his apartment in the Northside, too defeated to care about the puddles anymore. His roommate, Julian, was sprawled on their threadbare couch when Elias walked in, still dripping. Julian took one look at him and whistled low. "Damn, man, what happened to you? You look like you went swimming in your interview suit." Elias peeled off his jacket and hung it over a chair, knowing it was probably ruined. "Something like that?" "How'd it go?" "It didn't. They canceled. CEO emergency." Julian sat up, his expression shifting to genuine concern. "Seriously? After all that prep?" "Yeah." Elias collapsed on the other end of the couch. "But there was this woman stuck in the flood. She was having a panic attack, and I couldn't just—" "Oh, no," Julian interrupted. "Please tell me you didn't." "Didn't what?" "Play hero. Elias, man, you can't keep doing this. You stopped to help someone instead of getting to your interview." "She needed help, Julian. And you need a job." Julian's voice rose with frustration. "You need to pay rent. You need health insurance. You need to stop acting like the world's going to reward you for being a good person, because guess what? It won't. Nice guys don't have health insurance, Elias. They have wetsuits and missed opportunities." The words stung because part of Elias wondered if Julian was right. He looked at his father's watch, still stubbornly stuck at 3:17, and felt something crack inside his chest. "Maybe you're right," he said quietly. Julian's expression softened. "Look, I'm not saying don't help people. I'm just saying maybe help yourself first sometimes. You can't save everyone." That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the day, wondering what would have happened if he'd just kept walking. Would he have gotten the job? Would his life be different? But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sloane's terrified face behind that steering wheel, and he knew he'd make the same choice again. His mother would be proud of that at least. 3 days later, Elias was at Crescent Plaza trying to sketch his way out of his funk. The plaza was one of his favorite spots in Oakhaven Bay, a pocket of green nestled between steel and glass towers. The fog had rolled in thick that morning, giving everything a dreamlike quality. He was sketching the old fountain when he heard a voice behind him. "That's beautiful." Elias turned and felt his stomach drop. It was her, Sloane from the storm, but different now. She wore a sharp navy suit that probably cost more than his rent, her hair styled perfectly, looking every inch of the powerful businesswoman she clearly was. She seemed to glow against the gray fog, untouchable and elegant. "You," he said, standing up so fast he nearly knocked over his coffee. She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "Me? I was hoping I'd run into you." "You? How did you—" "I come here sometimes to think. This is my favorite spot in the city." She gestured to the bench beside him. "May I?" They sat, and for a moment neither spoke. Elias couldn't stop staring at her, this polished version of the terrified woman he'd helped. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button so you never miss incredible tales like this one.
"I never got to properly thank you," Sloane said finally. "What you did during the storm, that was extraordinary." "It was the right thing to do," Elias replied, feeling heat creep up his neck. "Anyone would have done it." "But they didn't. Dozens of people drove past me. You were the only one who stopped." She turned to face him fully. "I want to make it up to you somehow. Please, let me buy you coffee at least." They ended up at a small cafe tucked into a side street, the kind of place tourists never found. Over cappuccinos, they talked. Sloane asked about his sketches, and Elias found himself opening up about his work at the Northside Bridge Academy, where he volunteered teaching design to kids who'd never held a graphics tablet before. "Why design?" she asked, her eyes genuinely curious. "Because it's power," Elias said, warming to the subject. "These kids, they're told every day that they don't matter, that their neighborhood doesn't matter, that they'll never amount to anything. But when you teach them they can create brands, build websites, design their own futures, that changes something fundamental. They start to see themselves differently." Sloane was quiet for a moment, studying him with an intensity that made him nervous. "That's a beautiful philosophy." "What about you?" Elias asked, deflecting. "What do you do?" "I work in tech," she said vaguely. "Product development mostly. It's complicated and honestly kind of boring." "I doubt anything about you is boring," Elias said, then immediately wanted to take it back. "Sorry, that was sweet," Sloane finished, smiling. "That was sweet." They talked for 2 hours until Sloane's phone buzzed insistently and she made an apologetic face. "I have to run, but Elias, I'd like to see you again, if that's okay." "Yeah," he said, probably too quickly. "Yeah, that would be great." She wrote her number on a napkin in elegant script and pressed it into his hand. "Call me?" Over the next week, they met 3 more times. Coffee turned into lunch, lunch turned into a long walk through the Maritime Museum, and each time Elias felt himself falling a little harder. Sloane was brilliant and funny, with a sharp wit that kept him on his toes. She asked questions like she really wanted to know the answers, like his opinions actually mattered. But there was something she wasn't telling him. He could feel it in the way she sometimes dodged questions about her work, or how she always insisted on meeting in low-key places, never anywhere too public or fancy. Elias told himself it didn't matter, that everyone was entitled to their privacy. On their 4th meeting, they ended up at a crowded deli in the financial district. Sloane had mentioned she needed to grab food for her team, and Elias had tagged along. She ordered enough sandwiches to feed an army, and when the cashier rang her up, her card was declined. "That's impossible," Sloane muttered, trying it again. Declined. She pulled out another card.
declined, her face flushed with embarrassment as the line behind them grew longer and more impatient. "It must be the bank," she muttered, fumbling for her phone. "There was that data breach last week. They probably froze my accounts as a precaution." "I've got it," Elias said, stepping forward with his debit card. "Elias, no. This is almost $200 worth of food." "Then I'm investing in your team's happiness," he said lightly, though internally he was doing rapid math. This was most of what he had left until his next freelance payment came through. But the look of mortification on Sloane's face made the decision easy. The transaction went through, and Sloane looked at him with something he couldn't quite identify. Gratitude, yes, but something deeper, sadder maybe. "I'll pay you back," she promised. "Tomorrow, I swear." "Don't worry about it." "Elias," she touched his arm, "I will pay you back." That night, lying in bed, Elias wondered what he was doing. Julian's words kept echoing in his head. Here he was, spending money he didn't have on a woman who was clearly out of his league, a woman who worked in tech and wore suits that cost more than his monthly rent, a woman who was probably just being nice to the guy who helped her in the storm. But then he'd remember the way she laughed at his jokes, or how he'd listened with complete attention when he talked about his students, and he'd think maybe, just maybe, this was real. The call came 2 days later. Elias was at the academy helping a kid named Marcus perfect his logo design when his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Thorne, this is Rebecca Chen from Vanguard Tech Design. I'm calling about the interview that was postponed due to the emergency situation." Elias's heart stopped. "Yes? We'd like to reschedule. Would you be available tomorrow at 2 p.m.? "Absolutely. Yes, thank you." "Wonderful. Please come to the executive floor, suite 4500. Someone will meet you in the lobby." Elias hung up and had to sit down. Marcus looked at him with concern. "You good, Mr. T?" "Yeah, I think I might be." That entire evening he re-prepared. He pressed his one good suit, the one that hadn't been destroyed in the storm. He rehearsed answers to potential questions. He reviewed his portfolio until he could recite every project in his sleep. And he tried very hard not to think about the fact that he hadn't heard from Sloane in 2 days. The next afternoon, Elias stood in the lobby of Vanguard Tower, his portfolio clutched in sweating hands. The building was even more impressive on the inside than he'd imagined. Everything was glass and steel and possibility. A woman in a crisp white blouse approached him. "Mr. Thorne?" "Yes. Please follow me." They rode the elevator to the 45th floor in silence. The doors opened onto a reception area that looked like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Oakhaven Bay, the water sparkling in the afternoon sun. "This way, please." She led him down a corridor lined with awards and accolades, then stopped in front of a massive door made of frosted glass. "She'll be with you in just a moment," the woman said, and left before Elias could ask who she was.
Elias stood alone in the hallway, his heart hammering against his ribs. Through the frosted glass, he could make out the silhouette of someone sitting in a high-backed chair, facing away from the door toward the windows. The office was enormous, probably bigger than his entire apartment. The door clicked open automatically, and a voice called out, "Please come in, Mr. Thorne." That voice. Elias knew that voice. He stepped inside, his legs suddenly feeling like they might give out. The chair began to turn, slowly, deliberately, like a scene from a movie. And there she was, Sloane. But not the Sloane from the coffee shops in the deli. This was Sloane Vanguard, CEO of Vanguard Tech Design, in a charcoal power suit that probably cost more than his car. Her hair was pulled back severely, her expression unreadable, every inch the formidable executive he'd seen profiled in business magazines. "Hello, Elias," she said quietly.
He couldn't speak, couldn't move. His mind was racing through every conversation they'd had, every moment, trying to make sense of this. "Please sit down," Sloane continued, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Elias sat because his legs gave him no choice. His portfolio slipped from his hands and landed on the floor with a soft thud. Neither of them moved to pick it up. "You're the CEO," he finally managed. "I am. The emergency, the accident that canceled my first interview, that was you in the storm." "Yes." A dozen emotions crashed through him at once: anger, confusion, betrayal, and underneath it all, a crushing embarrassment. "You knew when we met at the plaza, when we had coffee, all those times, you knew who I was." Sloane leaned forward, her hands clasped on the desk. "I knew who you were the moment I looked you up after the storm, the man who sacrificed his interview to help a stranger. I found your application in our system. I saw your portfolio, your background, everything." "And you didn't think to tell me," Elias's voice cracked. "You let me think we were just, what, two people who met by chance?" "We did meet by chance, Elias. Everything that happened in that storm was real. But everything after was a lie." "No." Sloane stood abruptly, moving to the window. The afternoon light caught her profile, and Elias hated that even now, even feeling this betrayed, he thought she was beautiful. "I didn't lie to you. I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing." She turned to face him. "Is it? You never asked me my last name. You never asked which tech company I worked for. You made assumptions and I let you keep them, but I never lied." "Why?" The question came out raw. "Why would you do this?" Sloane walked back to her desk, but didn't sit. Instead, she leaned against it, her arms clasped. "Because I needed to know if you were real." "Real?" "Do you know how many people apply to work here every year, Elias? Thousands. Do you know how many of them would help a stranger in the storm if it meant missing their interview? I needed to know if your kindness was something you put on for job interviews or if it was who you actually are." Elias stood up, anger finally overtaking the shock. So this was a test? Our conversations, the coffee, the deli, all of it was just some elaborate character assessment? At first, maybe, but somewhere between the Maritime Museum and you paying for $200 worth of sandwiches with what I know was probably your last bit of money, it stopped being a test and started being something else. What? What did it become? She looked at him, and for the first time since he'd entered the office, her careful composure cracked. Complicated. The word hung between them like smoke. Elias grabbed his portfolio from the floor, needing something to do with his hands. "I should go." "Please don't." Sloane's voice was soft now, almost pleading. "Let me explain properly. Let me show you something." She walked to a large screen on the wall and tapped it. His portfolio appeared, every page of it. "I've known about your work for 3 weeks. Your designs are exceptional, Elias. The way you blend street art aesthetics with corporate branding, your understanding of user experience, your innovative approach to accessible design, it's exactly what we need here." "But," Elias prompted, because there was clearly a but coming. "But talent isn't enough. I can teach someone to be a better designer. I can't teach them to be a better person." She pulled up another image, a proposal document with his name on it. "I wanted to offer you the lead creative director position the day after the storm, but I needed to know if the man who helped me was the same man who would lead a team, who would represent this company, who would make decisions that affect hundreds of employees." Elias stared at the screen. Lead creative director. It was a position he hadn't even dared to dream about when he applied for the junior designer role. "So you stalked me," Elias said, but there was less heat in his voice now. "I got to know you," Sloane corrected. "And yes, I should have told you who I was. You're right to be angry. But Elias, in those conversations, I was more myself than I've been in years. When I'm Sloane Vanguard CEO, people see the title before they see me. They want something from me. But when I was just Sloane from the storm, you saw me, just me. That's not fair, Elias said quietly. You got to see all of me while hiding half of yourself. I know, and I'm sorry. She moved closer to him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. But I'm not sorry I got to know you. I'm not sorry I saw you with those kids at the academy, watching you teach them that they matter. I'm not sorry we spent 2 hours talking about architecture and city planning and your theory that every building tells a story about the people who made it. Despite everything, Elias felt his anger softening. You remember that conversation? I remember all of them. She reached out, then stopped herself, her hand falling back to her side. I'm offering you this job because you're brilliant, but I'm hoping you'll forgive me because somewhere in all of this mess, I started to care about you. Really care.
Elias looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the uncertainty beneath the CEO facade. She was nervous. Sloane Vanguard, one of the most powerful women in the tech industry, was nervous about what he would say. I don't know what to think right now, he admitted. Part of me wants to walk out of here and never look back. Part of me understands why you did it. And part of me, he trailed off. Part of you what? Part of me is wondering if any of it was real, the connection we had. Was that real, or was I just another item on your executive checklist? Sloane flinched like he'd slapped her. It was real. God, Elias, it was the most real thing I felt in years. Do you think I make a habit of spending my afternoons in coffee shops with job applicants? Do you think I tell just anyone about how my mother wanted me to be a doctor and I disappointed her by building software instead? Elias remembered that conversation, how vulnerable she'd seemed when she'd shared that. He told her about his father, about wearing the broken watch, about how the Northside was more than just a zip code to him. It was family. They'd traded pieces of themselves that afternoon, and it had felt sacred. Show me the job description, he said finally. Sloane pulled up another document, lead creative director. The salary made Elias's eyes water. The benefits package included things he'd only dreamed about: health insurance, dental, vision, a retirement plan, stock options. There was a team of 12 designers he'd be leading, working on projects for clients he'd only seen in magazines. This is too much, he said. I applied for a junior position. I don't have the experience for this. You have exactly the experience we need. You've been running your own freelance business for 3 years. You manage projects, handle clients, meet deadlines, and more importantly, you understand what we're trying to do here. Sloane pulled up another slide, this one showing a community initiative. We're launching a program to bring tech education to underserved communities across Oakhaven Bay. I need someone who understands those communities, who can build curricula that actually resonate with kids who've been told technology isn't for them. Elias stared at the presentation. It was everything he'd been trying to do at the Bridge Academy, but with resources he couldn't even imagine. Real funding, real infrastructure, real impact. The Northside Bridge Academy would be our pilot program, Sloane continued. You'd design the program, train the instructors, and oversee implementation. And Elias, your students there would have first priority for our internship program. He thought about Marcus struggling with his logo design just yesterday. Thought about Keisha, who had natural talent but no computer at home to practice on. Thought about all the kids who believed they were limited by their address. You're bribing me, he said. I'm showing you what's possible. There's a difference. Is there? He turned to face her directly. How do I know this isn't just another test? How do I know that a month from now you won't decide I failed some invisible criteria and let me go? Sloane's jaw tightened. You don't. Just like I don't know if you're going to hold this against me forever. Just like I don't know if we can figure out how to work together after everything that's happened. We're both taking a risk here, Elias. Except you hold all the power. Do I? She laughed, but there was no humor in it.
You have the power to walk out of here right now and tell everyone that the CEO of Vanguard Tech catfished a job applicant. You have the power to ruin my reputation with a single social media post. You have the power to make me feel things I swore I wouldn't feel again after my last relationship imploded. So no, Elias, I don't hold all the power here." The raw honesty in her voice cut through his defenses. He sank back into the chair, suddenly exhausted. "I need time to think." "Of course, take all the time you need." Sloane returned to her desk, and just like that, she was the CEO again, professional and composed. "The offer stands for 2 weeks. After that, we'll need to move forward with other candidates." "Other candidates who you also plan to secretly investigate?" A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "No, you're the only person I've ever done this with. For better or worse, you're special." Elias stood, portfolio in hand. At the door, he paused. "For what it's worth, the person I got to know over coffee and sandwiches, I really liked her. I'm just not sure she's the same person standing in this office." "She is," Sloane said softly. "She's just scared you won't believe that." Elias left without responding. In the elevator, he let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. His phone buzzed. A text from Julian. How'd it go? He had no idea how to answer that. That night, Elias sat on the roof of his apartment building, watching the fog roll in over Oakhaven Bay. He'd come up here to think, but his mind was a mess of competing thoughts and emotions. His phone rang. His mother. "Baby, you never called me back. How was the interview?" "It was complicated, Mom." "Complicated how?" He told her everything. The storm, meeting Sloane, the coffee dates, the deli, the revelation. His mother listened without interrupting, the way she always did when he really needed to talk. When he finished, there was a long pause. Then, "Do you think she's a good person?" "What?" "The woman, Sloane, setting aside the job and the deception and all of it. Do you think she's a good person?" Elias thought about how she'd talked about wanting to make technology accessible to everyone, not just people who could afford it, how she'd volunteered at a food bank every weekend, something she'd mentioned casually like it was nothing special, how she'd listened to his ideas about urban design like they mattered. "Yeah," he said finally, "I think she is. I think she made a mistake, but I think her heart was in the right place." "Then you already know what you're going to do," his mother said gently. "Do I?" "Your father used to say that you can judge a person's character by looking at their mistakes, not whether they make them, everyone makes mistakes, but what they do after. Does she seem sorry?" "Yes." "Is she trying to make it right?" "I think so." "Then the question isn't whether you can forgive her, baby. It's whether you can forgive yourself if you walk away from something that could be extraordinary just because it started messy." After they hung up, Elias stayed on the roof for another hour, turning his mother's words over in his mind. The fog had completely obscured the Vanguard Tower now, but he knew it was still there, solid and real and waiting. The next morning, Elias woke up with a decision half formed in his mind. He needed to talk to someone who would give it to him straight, no sugarcoating. He texted Julian. "Coffee?" They met at their usual spot, a dingy cafe in the Northside that served terrible coffee, but never judged you for sitting there for hours. Julian was already waiting, 2 cups on the table. "So," Julian said as Elias sat down, "you going to tell me what happened, or do I have to guess?" Elias laid it all out again, watching Julian's expression cycle through disbelief, anger, and finally something close to admiration. Wait, Julian interrupted. "She's offering you how much?" Elias told him the salary. Julian choked on his coffee. "And you're hesitating why exactly?" "Because she lied to me, Julian, or at least she wasn't honest." "Okay, but let me get this straight. She tested you by hanging out with you and buying you coffee and letting you be a gentleman, and now she wants to give you a dream job and change kids' lives in the North Side. What a monster." "You don't understand."
No, I think I do. Julian leaned forward. Look, man, last week I told you that nice guys don't get ahead. I told you that helping people wouldn't pay your rent. And I was wrong. You helped someone, and it did pay off. Maybe not in the way you expected, but it did. And now you're going to throw it away because your pride is hurt? It's not about pride. Isn't it? Come on, Elias. You're mad because she's rich and powerful, and she saw you at your most vulnerable, helping her in the rain like some kind of rom-com hero. You're mad because the power dynamic feels off. But here's the thing. She was vulnerable too. She was having a panic attack in the middle of an intersection. She trusted you with that, and then she trusted you with her real self, even if she didn't give you her full name. Elias wanted to argue, but Julian wasn't finished. You know what I think? I think you're scared. You're scared because this is real. The job is real. The opportunity is real. And yeah, maybe whatever's happening between you and her is real too. And that's terrifying because you've spent your whole life expecting people from that world to look down on people from ours. They do look down on us. Maybe, but she didn't. She showed up at the Bridge Academy. She ate at our deli. She saw where you come from, and she still wants you on her team. So the question is, are you going to let fear make this decision for you? Elias stared into his terrible coffee. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just don't usually listen, Julian grinned. So what are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I think I need to talk to her again, really talk, not just react. Good. And Elias, whatever you decide, make sure it's what you actually want, not what you think you deserve. Those are two different things. Elias spent the rest of the day at the Bridge Academy, teaching and thinking. Marcus was working on a new project, a complete brand identity for a fictional sneaker company. The kid had talent, real talent, but he kept second-guessing himself. It's not good enough, Marcus said, deleting his work for the third time. Hey, Elias put a hand on his shoulder. Stop doing that. Stop deciding it's not good enough before you even finish it. But what if people don't like it? What if they do, Marcus? You're so busy protecting yourself from failure that you're not giving yourself a chance to succeed. The words echoed in his own head as he said them. Wasn't that exactly what he was doing with Sloane? Protecting himself from potential hurt by not even trying? That evening, he called the number Sloane had given him. She answered on the second ring. Elias? Can we meet somewhere neutral? I want to talk. There was a pause, and he could hear the hope in her voice when she responded. Yes? Where? Crescent Plaza, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. I'll be there. He arrived 15 minutes early, nervous energy making it impossible to sit still. The plaza was quiet in the early morning, fog still clinging to the fountain, the city just beginning to wake up. When Sloane arrived, she was dressed casually, jeans and a simple sweater, and he realized she'd done that on purpose. No power suit, no CEO armor, just Sloane. They sat on the same bench where they'd first talked after the storm. Thank you for calling. Elias began. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what happened, about what you did, about all of it. And I'm still hurt. I'm still angry that you weren't upfront with me, but I also understand why you did it, and I think maybe I would have done something similar if I were in your position. Sloane nodded slowly, not interrupting. But here's the thing. If we're going to do this, work together, or whatever else this might become, we need to be honest with each other, completely honest. No more tests, no more games. I agree. I mean it, Sloane. I need to be able to trust you, and you need to be able to trust me, and that starts now. Okay, then let me be completely honest. I want you to take this job because you're the best person for it, but I also want you to take it because I'm not ready to say goodbye to you. These past few weeks, getting to know you, have been the best part of my year, maybe the best part of the last several years. Elias felt his heart race. That's honest.
I'm not done. I'm also terrified that if you take the job, we'll mess up whatever we might have had, that the professional will complicate the personal, or vice versa. I don't have answers for how we navigate that. I just know I want to try. What if it doesn't work out, the job or the personal stuff? Then we deal with it like adults. But Elias, what if it does work out? What if this crazy, messy, complicated situation turns into something amazing? He thought about his students, about the community program, about the chance to do meaningful work with real resources. He thought about Sloane, about the connection they'd built, even under false pretenses. He thought about his father's watch, still frozen at 3:17, a reminder that time stops for no one. I want to accept the job, but I have conditions. Name them. First, I want complete creative control over the community program. You hired me because of my vision. I need you to trust that vision. Done. Second, I want a clear separation between work and personal. If we're going to explore whatever this is between us, it happens outside the office. At work, you're my boss and I'm your employee, and we keep it professional.
Sloane considered this carefully. That's going to be difficult. We'll be working closely together on the community initiative. I know, but it's necessary. I won't be the guy who got his position because he's dating the CEO. I need to earn respect from the team on my own merit. You will. They're going to love you. She paused. And for the record, we're not dating yet. Yet? A small smile played at her lips. I'm just being honest, like you asked. I'd like to take you to dinner, a real dinner where we both know exactly who the other person is. Third condition, Elias continued, trying to ignore the flutter in his chest. You meet my mother. Sloane's eyes widened. Your mother? If we're doing this, any of this, she needs to meet you. She's been my compass my whole life, and I trust her judgment. If she thinks you're not genuine, then we're done before we start. That's terrifying, Sloane admitted, but fair. When? Sunday dinner, this week. She makes pot roast. I'll be there. Sloane extended her hand. Do we have a deal, Mr. Thorne? Elias looked at her hand, then took it. Her grip was firm, professional, but her eyes were soft with something that looked like relief. We have a deal, Miss Vanguard. They shook, and Elias felt like he'd just stepped off a cliff, not knowing if he was falling or flying. The next few days were a whirlwind. Elias gave notice at his freelance clients, explaining he was taking a position at Vanguard. The reactions ranged from congratulations to disbelief. Vanguard didn't usually hire people from the Northside. He signed contracts, filled out paperwork, and tried not to think too hard about the fact that his life was completely changing. Julian helped him buy a proper work wardrobe, dragging him to outlets and discount stores. You can't show up to a tech company looking like you got dressed in the dark, Julian insisted, holding up a shirt. Image matters, whether we like it or not. I thought you said I should be myself. You should, but yourself can have clothes that fit properly. Sunday arrived faster than Elias wanted. He'd warned his mother that Sloane was coming, but he'd downplayed how nervous he was about it. He showed up early to help cook, but really he just needed something to do with his hands. Miriam Thorne was a small woman with an enormous presence. She'd raised Elias alone after his father died, working 2 jobs while making sure he stayed in school and out of trouble. She had a way of seeing through people that was almost supernatural. Stop pacing, she said as Elias checked the window for the 5th time. You're making me nervous. What if she doesn't come? Then she's not who you think she is, and you'll know. Miriam stirred the gravy. But she'll come. A woman doesn't agree to meet a man's mother unless she's serious. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 p.m. Elias opened it to find Sloane standing there with a bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine, looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her. Hi, she said. I wasn't sure what to bring, so I brought both. You brought yourself, that's enough.
He led her inside where his mother was waiting. Miriam looked at Sloane up and down with the practiced eye of someone who dealt with plenty of people trying to impress her. "So you're the woman who's turned my son's life upside down." "I am," Sloane said, not flinching, "and I'm sorry for the way I handled things. I should have been more forthright with Elias from the beginning." "Yes, you should have, but you're here now, which counts for something. Come sit. Dinner's almost ready." The meal started awkwardly with polite small talk about the weather and the city, but Miriam had never been one for surface conversation, and halfway through the pot roast, she cut to the heart of it. "Why my son?" she asked Sloane. "You run a tech company. You could hire anyone. Why take a chance on someone with no corporate experience?" Sloane set down her fork and met Miriam's gaze directly. "Because corporate experience can be taught. Integrity can't. Your son stopped to help a stranger when he had every reason not to. He spent his last $20 buying lunch for someone he barely knew. He volunteers his time teaching kids that society is written off. Those aren't things you can learn in a boardroom, Mrs. Thorne. Those are things you either have or you don't." "And you think that makes him qualified to run a team?" "I think it makes him lead. There's a difference." Miriam studied her for a long moment, then turned to Elias. "She's smart. I'll give her that." "Mom," Elias protested, embarrassed. "What? I'm allowed to vet the woman who's hiring my baby boy." But there was a warmth in her voice now, a softening. "Tell me about this community program." Sloane's entire demeanor changed as she described the initiative. She talked about accessibility, about breaking down barriers, about giving kids the tools to build their own futures. Elias watched his mother's expression shift from skeptical to engaged to genuinely excited. "The Northside Bridge Academy would be your pilot?" Miriam asked. "Yes, Elias knows those kids, knows what they need. I want him to design a program that can scale across the entire city, but it has to start there. It has to be authentic." "And if it fails?" "Then we learn from it and try again. But I don't think it will fail, not with Elias running it." After dinner, Miriam pulled Elias aside while Sloane was in the bathroom. "I like her," she said quietly. "She's got steel in her spine, but she's not cruel with it. And she looks at you the way your father used to look at me." "Mom, it's not like that. We're just—" "Lying to your mother now?" Miriam smiled. "Baby, I've seen how you look at her. Just be careful. Mixing business and pleasure is like mixing oil and water. It takes constant work to keep them from separating." "I know. But," she continued, "if anyone can make it work, it's you. You've got your father's heart and my stubbornness. That's a powerful combination." When Sloane emerged, Miriam hugged her at the door. "You take care of him at that company. He's tougher than he looks, but he feels things deeply. Don't mistake his kindness for weakness." "I won't," Sloane promised. "I've seen how strong he is." Elias walked Sloane to her car, the night air cool and carrying the scent of fog rolling in from the bay. "Your mother is incredible," Sloane said. "She liked you. That's a big deal." "I was terrified," Sloane laughed. "I've pitched to venture capitalists and negotiated with Fortune 500 CEOs, and I've never been as nervous as I was walking into that apartment." "You did great." Elias leaned against her car. "So, about that dinner you mentioned, the real one. Friday night? There's a new restaurant on the waterfront, unless that's too fancy." "Sloane, I watched you eat pot roast in my mother's tiny kitchen. I think we're past worrying about fancy." She smiled, and in the streetlight she looked younger, less burdened. "Friday then, 7 p.m.
"It's a date." He opened her car door for her, and she paused before getting in. "Elias, thank you for giving me a second chance. Thank you for being worth it." Monday morning, Elias walked into Vanguard Tech Design as an employee for the first time. The building felt different now that he belonged here. The receptionist greeted him by name, and someone from HR met him in the lobby to handle his orientation.
His office was on the 40th floor, smaller than Sloane's, but with a view that took his breath away. He could see all the way to the Northside from here, the neighborhood where he'd grown up, looking tiny and distant, but still visible, still part of him. His team was waiting in the conference room, 12 designers, all looking at him with varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism. He was younger than most of them, less experienced, and everyone knew he'd gotten the job under unusual circumstances. "I'm Elias Thorne," he began, deciding to address it head on. "I know some of you are wondering why I'm here, why Sloane, Miss Vanguard, chose someone from outside the industry to lead this team." A woman in the back, maybe 35, with purple streaks in her hair, raised her hand. "We heard you helped her during the storm. Is that true?" "It's true. I also almost missed my interview to do it, which turned out to be both the worst and best decision I ever made." That got a few smiles. "But I'm not here because I helped the CEO. I'm here because I understand what we're trying to build. I grew up in the North Side. I know what it's like to believe technology isn't for people like you. I know what it's like to feel like the city has written you off before you even start." He pulled up images of his work at the Bridge Academy on the screen. "These are my students, kids who've been told they'll never amount to anything. But look at this." He showed them Marcus's sneaker brand, Keisha's app design, project after project created by teenagers who'd never touched design software before he taught them. "This is what we're going to do, except bigger. We're going to prove that talent isn't limited by zip code, that creativity doesn't care about your bank account. And we're going to build a program so good that every tech company in the country tries to copy it." The woman with the purple hair was nodding now. Others were leaning forward, engaged. "I don't have all the answers, but I have vision and I have passion, and I'm willing to work harder than anyone else in this building to make this happen. What I need from you is honesty. If you think I'm wrong about something, tell me. If you have a better idea, share it. We're a team, and teams only work when everyone's voice matters." A man in the front, older with glasses, spoke up. "What's your timeline?" "Pilot program launches at the Northside Bridge Academy in 6 weeks. We'll run it for 3 months, gather data, adjust, and then scale to 5 more locations by the end of the year. Ambitious, maybe impossible, but that's never stopped anyone in this industry before." The meeting ran for 2 hours. By the end, Elias could feel the team starting to come together, skepticism giving way to excitement. They had ideas, good ones, and Elias filled 3 whiteboards with notes. When everyone filed out, the woman with purple hair lingered. "I'm Diana, senior designer. I've been here 5 years." "Nice to meet you." "I was against your hire, bluntly. I thought it was nepotism, favoritism, whatever you want to call it. I thought Sloane was making a mistake." Elias braced himself for whatever was coming next. "But that presentation, that passion, I'm in 100%. And I think I speak for most of the team when I say we're ready to build something amazing with you." Relief flooded through him. "Thank you. That means everything." "Just don't prove me wrong," she said with a grin, and left. Elias collapsed into his office chair, exhausted and exhilarated. His phone buzzed. A text from Sloane. "How'd it go?" "Better than expected. They didn't throw me out." "Told you they'd love you." "Lunch? I promised to be very professional and boss-like." "Rain check. I need to decompress, and there's about 50 emails I need to respond to." "Of course. See you at the Friday meeting. And Elias, I'm proud of you." He stared at that last message for a long time before responding. "Thanks for everything." The week flew by in a blur of meetings, planning sessions, and late nights designing curriculum. Elias threw himself into the work with an intensity that surprised even him. He met with community leaders, educators, and former students from the Bridge Academy. He revised budgets and timelines, pushed back on ideas that wouldn't work, and championed ones that would. By Friday, he'd barely seen Sloane except in meetings where they kept things rigorously professional. It was harder than he had expected, maintaining that boundary. Every time she walked into a room, his heart did something stupid. Every time she smiled at one of his ideas, he had to remind himself that they were at work. Their dinner reservation was at 7. At 6:30, Elias was in his apartment trying on his 4th shirt while Julian heckled him from the couch. You realize you've worked with her all week, right? She knows what you look like. This is different. This is Elias. A date. It's a date. Say it. A date, Elias admitted, and I'm terrified. Good. That means it matters. Julian stood and fixed Elias's collar. Now go. Be yourself. The same guy who jumped into a flood to help a stranger. That guy is pretty darn great. The restaurant was elegant but not pretentious, right on the waterfront, with views of the bay. Sloane was already there when Elias arrived, wearing a deep blue dress that matched the water behind her. She stood when she saw him, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "Hi," she said. "Hi." They sat, and suddenly all the easy conversation before felt impossible. They were both trying too hard, too aware of what this meant. "This is awkward," Sloane finally said, laughing. "Why is this awkward? We've had dinner before." "Because before you were Sloane from the storm and I was just Elias. Now you're my boss and I'm your employee, and we're trying to figure out if we can also be something else. So let's not be those people tonight." She reached across the table and took his hand. "Tonight, I'm just Sloane. You're just Elias. No titles, no complications. Just two people who met during a storm and can't seem to think about each other." Elias felt the tension drain away. "I can do that." And they did. They talked about everything except work, about books and movies, about their childhoods, about dreams they'd had as kids. Sloane told him about learning to code in secret because her mother thought it was unladylike. Elias told him about the first time he'd used design software, how it felt like magic. "I was 12, using a library computer with a 20-minute time limit. I created this terrible logo for a fake company, but I was so proud of it. I printed it out and hung it on my wall." "Do you still have it?" "Yeah, actually, it's in a box somewhere. Terrible design, but it reminds me why I started." Sloane smiled. "I'd like to see it sometime." "You're going to regret saying that. It's really bad." "I doubt it." Dinner stretched into dessert, dessert into coffee, and before Elias realized it, 3 hours had passed. They walked along the waterfront afterwards, the fog rolling in thick and cool. "I have a confession," Sloane said as they stopped at a railing overlooking the water. "I was terrified you turned down the job, that I'd ruined everything with my stupid test." "It wasn't stupid. It was misguided, maybe, but not stupid. Either way, I'm glad you said yes. The work you did this week with the team, Elias, you're already exceeding every expectation I had." "Careful, keep talking like that and I'll think you actually like me." She turned to face him, and in the dim light from the street lamps, her expression was serious. "I'm more than like you. I think I'm falling for you. And it's terrifying because I'm your boss and this could complicate everything, and I've spent my whole life avoiding complications." Elias's heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. "I'm falling for you too. Have been since you offered me a diamond ring in the middle of a flood." "That was a terrible offer. I wasn't thinking clearly." "No, but it was genuine. That's what mattered." They stood there, the fog swirling around them, the city quiet for once. Elias knew they still had 1,000 things to figure out: boundaries, professional ethics, what it meant to date your boss or your employee. But in that moment, none of it seemed as important as the way Sloane was looking at him. "So, what do we do now?" she asked softly. "We take it one day at a time, we keep our promises about work, and we see where this goes." "That's very reasonable and mature of you." "I have my moments." Sloane laughed, and then she kissed him. It was soft and tentative at first, a question more than a statement. But when Elias kissed her back, it became something more, a promise, a beginning, a leap of faith. When they finally pulled apart, Sloane rested her forehead against his. "I should probably take you home. We both have work tomorrow." "Probably. But I don't want tonight to end." "Me neither. But that's how we'll know this is real, because we'll get tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. Elias walked home that night with his head in the clouds and his feet barely touching the ground. When he got to his apartment, Julian was still up. "That good, huh?" Julian asked, seeing his expression. "Yeah, that good. I'm happy for you, man, really. You deserve this." Elias thought about everything that had happened, the storm, the missed interview, the deception, the revelation, and now this. It had been messy and complicated.
And nothing like he'd planned, but somehow it had led him exactly where he needed to be. He looked at his father's watch, still frozen at 3:17, and smiled. Time had stopped for his father, but for Elias, it felt like time was just beginning. 6 weeks later, the pilot program launched at the Northside Bridge Academy. Elias stood in front of 25 students, many of them kids he'd taught before, others brand new. Sloane was in the back of the room, observing but not interfering, just as they'd agreed. "Welcome," Elias began, "to the first day of the rest of your lives. I know that sounds dramatic, but I mean it. What you learn here will give you power, the power to create, to build, to shape your own future. And I know this because I was sitting where you are not that long ago, believing that people like us don't get opportunities like this." Marcus raised his hand. "But we're getting one now, right?" "You are, and you're going to make the most of it." The class was everything Elias had hoped it would be and more. By the end of the first session, students were already designing, already creating, already believing in possibilities they'd never considered before. After everyone left, Sloane approached him. "That was incredible." "It's just the beginning." "I know. That's what makes it incredible." They walked out of the academy together, careful to maintain professional distance until they were outside. Then Sloane took his hand, and they stood looking up at the building where so much had changed. "You know what the best part is?" Elias said. "What?" "This time last year, I was struggling to make rent, wondering if I'd ever get a real break. Now I'm changing lives, and I get to do it with you. We did it together. You had the vision, I just gave you the resources." "That's not true, and you know it, but I'll let you believe it if it makes you happy." Sloane laughed and leaned her head on his shoulder. "I am happy, really happy. Are you?" Elias thought about it. About the job he loved, the work that mattered, the woman beside him who challenged and supported him in equal measure, about the kids who now had opportunities they'd never had before, about his mother's pride and Julian's friendship and the way his father's watch still didn't work but somehow felt more meaningful than ever. "Yeah," he said, "I really am." And in the distance, the Vanguard Tower stood tall against the Oakhaven Bay skyline, its lights shining like a beacon, promising that sometimes, just sometimes, storms lead to rainbows, and helping a stranger can change absolutely everything. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe in second chances, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, drop a comment below about what you thought, and smash that like button. Your support helps us bring you more incredible stories like this one. What would you have done in Elias's position? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next story. The end.